We all have that one fear that stays with us through childhood. Sometimes it's the dark corner of a closet in a childhood home. Other times, it's something like dogs or snakes or sharks or the ocean or some other odd but sensible thing. A fear caused by an experience we've had, a movie we've seen, or a book we've read. The horror ingrained into our psyche from that single, most impactful experience. It was a quiet night in the early 2000s when the terror began for 8-year-old Sienna, spending time with her parents in their old suburban single-story house in Pennsylvania. The sky was clear, and a handful of dim stars twinkled in the blackness. The neighborhood quiet, with the windows of nearby houses lit up to reveal activity within. In this house, located near the end of the cul-de-sac, at the bottom of a hill, was as nondescript as any other, with its white paneling, simple mum garden, and single dogwood tree located in a mulch island in the front yard. The house itself was built in the shape of a capital L, with the entrance to the house, as well as most of the occupied areas, residing in the top section. Sienna's room was tucked neatly into the bottom end, on the opposite side of the house from the rest of the bedrooms and living space. Her room was a simple, small, square shape, with her bedroom door directly across from a window that overlooked the backyard. On a sunny day, the light from the warm summer sun, sparkling against the stirring water of the swimming pool, could shine through the window, casting white shimmers across the plain beige walls and bedroom door. Sienna did not like this window. It unnerved her. Sienna always had a deep, inexplicable fear of opening her bedroom door at night, as doing so would force her to come face to face with the inky blackness that enveloped the backyard, with nothing but a thin panel of glass between her and whatever nightmares dwelled in the darkness. Perhaps there was a part of her that always knew what would come. Perhaps the dreams she had of large, slender faces with pitch-black eyes, the size of her hands, sunken into sickly gray skin, watching her blankly, were not simply the nightmares she thought them to be. From what was to come, she would begin to suspect that those awful dreams were memories that had been buried deep in her mind in an attempt to protect herself from the trauma of what they had done to her. Regardless, she had begged her parents on several occasions to allow her to cover the window with a blanket, blinds, or even cardboard to calm her fears, a request which was always turned down with a simple and dismissive, "Sunlight is good for the bedroom. Keep the germs away," her mother said. This night, Sienna followed her usual routine, and at about 8 or 9 p.m., she wished her parents good night and walked down the long hall to her bedroom, turning the corner and reaching for the doorknob. A moment of hesitation struck her, as it usually did, before she would swing her door open to reveal the empty blackness of the uncovered window from across the room. Taking a deep breath, she gripped the knob tightly in her small hand, turning it and pushing the door open, then reaching around the door frame to flick the light switch, as she always had. As the light flashed on and illuminated the room, the breath Sienna had taken was ripped from her lungs. In the window, lit up by the ceiling light, was a face Sienna swore she had only ever seen in her nightmares. A face with leathery gray skin and large empty black, almond-shaped eyes stared back at her. Her stomach dropped, filling with icy terror. Her body was paralyzed, her voice long gone, as the creature that stood motionless in the window stared blankly at her, before Sienna would black out, losing consciousness, and waking the next morning in her bed the alarm clock buzzing, its shrill tone rhythmically. Her body would be soaked in sweat, her heart pounding, and her throat dry. She would glance over at the window, from the safety of her bed, on the far side of her room, from her bedroom door, and that horrible window. The buttery rays of dawn sunshine would fill her room. She would convince herself that what she had experienced was just another, more vivid nightmare. These terrifying visits continued off and on at random for months, and though Sienna would cry and beg her parents to help her cover the windows, protect her, anything, they would simply pat her head, tell her it was just a nightmare. They told her that there was nothing there in the window at night, that her overactive imagination, too many weekends watching scary Saturday night sleepover on Discovery Kids, had given her bad dreams that with time she would conquer and forget. Sienna would lay in her bed some nights, her blanket pulled over her nose. She would stare at the door terrified. She would see a shadow cast there from the face she knew would be peeking through her window. The being never seemed to come as she laid in her bed. Rather, it would always be there in the window, waiting for her to turn on her light and meet its dead, cold gaze. The worst, however, was yet to come. The thing in the window appeared to her one night, just as it always did, and fear flooded through her, as it always did. But this time, Sienna finally had the strength to break her paralysis and turn around. A thing she had tried to do so many times before, but never could. She was going to bolt for the living room, to the safety of her family, on the other side of the house. But when she turned, however, she learned why she had been unable to do so many times before. There, blocking the hallway behind her, was another creature, just like the one in the window. It stood only 4'5" tall, with its slender, bony frame and long limbs, filling the space as though it was much larger. It, like the thing in the window, now behind her, stole her voice and her movement. Once again, she could feel her body tremble as her silent screams filled her lungs to the point she thought they would burst. The being took a step towards her, then, reaching its long, wiry arm up to touch, maybe to grab Sienna. She blacked out again. Sienna woke up screaming, too terrified to look around into the darkness of her bedroom, and far too frightened to look over at the shadow that the uncovered window would cast on her door. Though she never saw the creatures again after that night, she remained afraid that she would one night see the shadows of the things that were terrorizing her. This fear has stayed with her as she has grown, as she has moved into new homes in new states, and she is still, over a decade later, haunted by the thought of what might be waiting on the other side of the blinds. Every time she has opened the blinds at night, she is always stuck with a moment of dread, silently praying that she will not see the face staring back at her once she does. Even now, as an adult woman, when she goes outside at night, she is sometimes scared to look up at the sky or to glance at the roof of her house. She still can't shake this fear that one day, just one day, she may see them lurking in the darkness there. Each time before her trembling hand opens the blinds to the darkness outside, she prays that those nightmares she had as a child were indeed merely dreams, and not some dark, hidden memory her young mind couldn't handle. She prays she doesn't look up one day and meet the dead, black eyes that have haunted her since childhood.